Good afternoon from the KUOW newsroom. This is Seattle Now. I'm Paige Browning with the roundup of today's top stories. It's Tuesday, June 10th. Starting with activity outside the courthouse today, protesters chanted outside Seattle's immigration court as hearings happened inside in response to immigration raids and federal crackdowns in LA.
Things are definitely heating up, but we're seeing that people are meeting the challenge.
Mattia Chabot is an organizer with UW's Students for a Democratic Society. One lone counter-protester also appeared. Vaughn Edlund carried a sign saying 100,000 deported, 11 million to go.
I'm a Democrat, but I'm also an American, and I'm really tired of us getting overrun by all these foreigners, Trump's doing the right thing, and as much as I dislike him.
At the court's exit for vehicles, protesters in black dragged e-bikes and scooters to stop vehicles from exiting, presumably because they had on board detained immigrants. That barricade blocking cars from exiting remained up into the afternoon. A few blocks away at City Hall, Seattle's new police chief said he expects to be jailed at some point by the Trump administration for standing up for free speech in Seattle. Incoming chief Sean Barnes made the comments today during a hearing that's part of his confirmation process. It came during a question about President Trump's use of the National Guard against protesters.
At some point, I will probably go to jail and be in prison because we have an administration that has threatened to jail politicians and indeed has done so in Milwaukee, if you remember that, and has threatened to jail a governor. I'm just a simple public servant. That's all I am. But I'm going to do the right thing for the people in Seattle, and I would hope that's your expectation of me.
Barnes could be confirmed as Seattle police chief as soon as next week.
I will do everything in my power to protect anyone in Seattle from anyone who comes to this city with the intention to hurt them or inhibit their First Amendment rights.
Barnes was previously the chief of police in Madison, Wisconsin. He'll replace interim chief Sue Rahr. And we're hearing a lot more reaction from leaders today about the use of the National Guard and Marines on local protests in California. Washington Congressman Adam Smith said President Trump is abusing his emergency powers. Smith is the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee. He told NPR this morning that local law enforcement is capable of handling the ongoing protests without federal help.
President Trump wants this confrontation, partially because he wants to emphasize the issue of immigration enforcement, but more, I fear, because he wants to politicize the U.S. military and legitimize using it as a law enforcement tool, which is incredibly dangerous.
Smith says the president has the right to activate emergency powers only when there's a risk of rebellion, but that's not the case in L.A. News today on President Trump's new travel ban. Washington State Attorney General Nick Brown says his office is taking a careful look and considering if the state has a legal basis to challenge it. Brown says he and other state officials will keep close tabs on how this ban affects people who live and work here.
And it's issued at a time when thousands of international students are working every day to renew their visas for their school next year, including here in Washington State. This ban sweeps up medical patients, students, and families, and people fleeing persecution.
Brown says a 2018 Supreme Court decision could affect whether they have the legal grounds to sue the federal government. That ruling upheld a version of the Trump administration's ban that mostly targeted majority Muslim countries. The latest ban lists full or partial restrictions for 19 countries. The Trump administration says the ban is a necessary security measure. There are two tragic incidents involving vehicles to be aware of today. First, Seattle authorities say two elderly women were killed this morning when a transport bus backed into them. Seattle police officers are investigating the incident, which happened in a parking lot in the Yesler Terrace neighborhood. Police say a bus unintentionally backed into a smoking area, hitting the women who were inside it. A third woman narrowly escaped. Officers say the bus driver stayed on the scene and has cooperated. And on I-5, a woman was killed in a crash last night in the Kent area. The driver's still on the run. A 26-year-old male is suspected in the wreck and faces felony hit-and-run charges. He was allegedly speeding up I-5 in a Tesla, swerving across all lanes, and rammed into a Lexus sedan. The driver of the Lexus was sent to Harborview, and the passenger died at the scene. The suspect's family arrived at the crash scene, saying they were alerted there was a wreck by Tesla's crash notification system. They're working with police. Police are searching an area between Leavenworth and Cle Elum today as they try to zero in on Travis Decker. Decker is accused of killing his 3 daughters, who were found 8 days ago. He's been on the run since. The Chelan County Sheriff's Office says a community alert is still in place for the Ingalls Creek and Valley High area. They're asking residents and visitors to secure their homes and vehicles and report suspicious activity to 911. Not far from this search, officials are battling a wildfire. The Red Bridge fire was reported around 4 Monday afternoon and has burned at least 2 buildings. It's 44 acres and 0% contained, so people nearby are under level 3 and level 2 evacuations. To our environment beat, a federal judge on Monday blocked President Trump's efforts to shut down diversity and equity programs at all levels of government. The White House still aims to eliminate funding for bringing equity to the greenery that shades city streets. John Ryan reports.
The city of Renton hit 109 degrees during the Northwest's big heat wave 4 years ago. City officials have been trying to make Renton more resilient ever since. Gabriella Golzarian is the city's urban forester.
We offer cooling centers to the public to escape, but that's not a long-term solution. We definitely need to be planting more trees. We need to be shading the pavement.
But efforts to bring more shade to Washington cities could wither. The federal government has been the biggest funder, but the Trump administration wants to kill funding for urban forestry. State legislators have cut funding too. State officials say they plan to find creative ways to pay for city trees. Shade can lower street temperatures 15 degrees. John Ryan, KUOW News.
Now, our feature story today, let's talk hockey. Seattle's brand new women's pro hockey team is coming together. The yet-to-be-named franchise signed its first players, including Olympic gold medalist Hillary Knight last week, and they added to the roster in yesterday's expansion draft. To learn more, KUOW's Kim Malcolm spoke with Seattle Times reporter Kate Shefty.
Let's start with Hillary Knight. She is a living legend, Team USA captain, one of the most recognizable faces in the sport. And at 35, she just tied for the PWHL scoring lead with 29 points last season. So she was a heck of a first player on this PWHL Seattle team. They went out and right after her signed Danielle Sardachny, who was a former Patty Kazmaier Memorial Award, which is given to the top female college ice hockey player in the United States. And Kayla Barnes was an Olympian at 19, the youngest player for Team USA, and won a national championship at Ohio State and is a young, very experienced defender who is probably going to anchor their blue line for years to come, perhaps. If this doesn't get people excited for the PWHL in Seattle, I don't really know what will.
Some great depth there. And then the draft took place yesterday. One of our colleagues here at the station said it was, quote, so awesome, all caps to watch. Did you feel the same way? What stood out for you?
It just blew my mind how much talent they were picking up. They just kept adding to an impossible seeming degree. The new GM, Megan Turner, really took advantage of these expansion draft rules and just signed just a really enviable team. It's not like they picked up the scraps here. If the goal was to make expansion teams competitive immediately, which supposedly it was, they succeeded, but with the cost of ticking off the inaugural 6 teams because some of them are just gutted. And this will probably be the last expansion draft with that particular format. And the Hockey News has them as the Walter Cup favorite next season with just 12 players, half a team signed. And they have to fill in a little bit, build through the draft, build through free agency, get the rest of those roster spots filled up. But this is a heck of a blueprint for a very scary team. I have to think that they probably blew a lot of their budget already, so they might be kind of top heavy, but that's a pretty small critique of this team. They look very, very good.
Wow, such a strong start for a brand new team here. But how good will it all be when they hit the ice? That's a kind of an X factor.
It really is. You never know. I mean, teams can look amazing on paper and then kind of fail to get out of the gate, but a lot of these players already have familiarity with each other. They signed Hillary Knight's fleet teammate, Hannah Bilka. They dipped from every single team except for Minnesota. And so a lot of these people know each other. And I like to think that that will translate, and I'm sure they hope it does.
Before we let you go, Kate, we've got to talk about the name for this team. They don't have a name yet. Are there any updates on what they could be called?
No updates. It seems right now that they're focused more on, they don't have a coach yet. They have half a team. They really only have one official front office employee. That process is ongoing. Apparently they're close to hiring a coach, but the name, they said they're comfortable with maybe going into the season just as PWHL Seattle and PWHL Vancouver. That is how the inaugural 6 played their first season. They want to nail it. They want to get it right, and especially in a city where the Kraken, I think we can safely say, no matter what they've done on the ice, the Kraken branding is very strong, and you want to match that energy. I did write, not to plug it, but I did write a long history piece on the Seattle Vamps.
I was about to ask you, yes. Do you think the Vamps would fly as a name now?
Personally, I would love it. I don't think there's anything scandalous about that word anymore, and it's kind of a wink to what the rest of the country thinks of us, which is Twilight Country. I think it would be hilarious and very cool and kind of powerful and kind of, just moody. I think it's very Seattle. I know it's not. One thing is it got nothing to do with the water, and that wouldn't really fit in with most of our teams, and I will acknowledge that.
Seattle Times reporter Kate Shefty talking with KUOW's Kim Malcolm. The interview was produced by John O'Brien. Next time on Seattle Now, the Seattle International Film Festival laid off 9 employees last week. We'll learn more about what's going on with SIFF from arts reporter Chase Hutchinson.
The SIFF programming schedule it was described to me like a puzzle where there are lots of different moving pieces. There are now less people doing a lot of these different things, which also includes putting things on the websites, promoting them, the very nuts and bolts work.
Hear that Wednesday morning. And that's all for today from the KUOW Newsroom in Seattle. Our producer is Andy Hurst, and I'm Paige Browning. Seattle Now and KUOW are members of the NPR network. See you soon.